You're listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, coming to you from the Kitchen Studios, located high atop the historic Raleigh building, located in the heart of downtown Raleigh. The NC F&B Podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFBPod. And now, the sommeliers to the stars, the barbacks in your backyard. It is Max and Matt.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today in studio, although I am not, we have Whiskey Kitchen Part 2. And to represent the management team, we have with us co-owner and co-founder, Mr. Jeff Mickel. Jeff, why don't you just say hello so we get used to hearing your voice?
Hi, thanks for having us.
We have Mr. Aaron Lambert, who is the AGM and in-house whiskey guru. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, how's it going?
And then the aforementioned, very famous in these parts, the bar manager, the one, the only, Johnny Berry.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Cheers.
And Matt is remote. He is on Zoom right now, driving down, probably not paying attention to roads, just doing this. No, I don't know. Where are you, Matt?
I'm at home.
Oh, okay.
Not on a football field?
It's early day for Cam, so I'm on pickup duty.
Got it. Cam is Matt's child. And we do have, in place of Matt, a picture of him, number 54, as the middle linebacker for, was that GN South? Great Neck South,
yeah.
From Matt's glory days of high school football. So that's a placeholder. Anyhow, gentlemen, thank you so much. Obviously, we had Sarah and Michael Thor on earlier this week, about a week ago, and with Movie Magic, it's like it just happened. But we talked about everything that was within their story in the beginning of Whiskey Kitchen, and of course, Michael's unfortunate accident that led to him being in his chair, but he's making amazing strides to become more movable as time goes on, and even become more integral into what is the Whiskey Kitchen. But at that time, he was, along with all of you, were planning to open this place as one big team, one big dream team, and then the accident happened, right? So maybe we can pick it up right there. And Jeff, I'm looking at you. You and Michael have known each other for a long time. I just got to ask you, what happened? How did you feel when you first heard the news?
Yeah, it was heavy. Sarah, his wife, called and said that he was in the hospital, and I rushed over there, and I was devastated to see the condition he was in, and my first thought was about him and his well-being, and
sure.
Business was secondary, I guess. But after
that plays a major part. So
yeah.
Let's talk about that. How did you feel? Like, what was going to happen with the Whiskey Kitchen at this point?
Well, yeah, he was the other half of the team, and so to lose a teammate like that was difficult. But at that point in the putting the whole thing together, the train had really left the station, and we were kind of off, so it had to get done. And luckily, all of the big decisions had kind of been made, and the direction had kind of been put in place as far as the construction and the design and the menus and stuff like that. So I really just managed the construction, part of things, and tried to get the building 100%, and then putting the team together was the biggest challenge, I think.
Right. And that's a big part. That's kind of what this episode is going to be about. It's going to talk about the team, because the team is what really is the lifeblood of the Whiskey Kitchen, and regardless of an accident or not, you guys are still going to have to fill out this entire team and bring in everybody. We were going to have Clayton on as well, but he's busy actually working at the restaurant. It makes sense because you're open and somebody needs to be there right now.
Yeah.
So him and Joanna both are.
And Joanna, yeah, the general manager. Well, her title is general manager. Yes, Joanna and executive chef Clayton as well. Clayton Anderson, sorry, and Joanna Newman. So they're there running the actual place right now. But aside from them, as we have out with everybody else, we kind of have the beverage side, and Aaron is being the AGM, which of course the assistant general manager. I think when we first met, you were kind of pitched to me as you were the whiskey guy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was not why I was hired, but Jeff kind of, I don't know, smelled my smelled my nerdism. Maybe that too. I don't know.
A little bit of that for sure.
And it was something I already kind of had a passion for, and I started in craft beer, and that lets you get as nerdy and hobby-like as you want with your drinking habits. So
yeah, I think for all of us, it kind of started as we all, and me and Aaron both came from craft beer, but then we all liked whiskey, and then this entity allowed us to like just indulge our geeky whiskiness, just another avenue to pursue curiosity.
And there was
Let's talk about that for a second, because you guys have an extensive whiskey program. And for people that maybe are living outside of the Triangle or outside of the state, they don't even know what they can expect. So give us an idea of what you would expect when you walk into the whiskey kitchen, specifically regarding the whiskey.
Well, there's a visual component to it that I don't know if words can do justice, but you walk in out of a Nash Square Park downtown, and a giant garage door is open in this big warehouse setting with a block-long mural on one wall by Taylor White, and that wall is full of 300 some. I don't know how many are on the wall specifically, but we've got about 400 labels in the building, and there's this giant skylight coming down. There's this cathedral effect, and if you aren't into whiskey, suddenly there's kind of a fascination for it. People start asking questions, even if they ask 19 questions and end up ordering vodka anyway. But there's definitely a visual spectacle to the number of bottles we've got. We hand people a menu that has a table of contents just for whiskey in it.
And that table of contents would read style of whiskey, country of origin. And what else would you look at when you see the table of contents?
It starts off with country of origin. That's kind of, we've also hashed through organization, kind of what whiskey taxon are we going to use, and what don't we like at other places, what's confusing, what boxes do we put things in to make things the most approachable. Jeff hit us early on with this tome of this, pardon my French, but this shit's delicious, not precious. And so that helped us all, kind of something Johnny and I had been missing in our whiskey and cocktail experience, which, as fun and as nerdy as you can get with that, there's just a lot of batitude and kind of asshole culture.
There's a lot of elitism out there, and really, at the end of the day, you drink it, and again, it turns into pee. Like, and the thing is, like, everybody, we try to welcome anybody and everybody. And realistically, for the most part, anybody can afford what we sell. And whether or not it's, yes, you have to dig deeper in your pocket, or it's more casual for you to, drop $15 on a glass of whiskey, or $60, or et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
If somebody wants it, they can still get it.
Yeah.
And we will happily
being able to follow,
and talk to them about it.
Follow whatever they're wanting out of this visit is a curiosity. They happen in off the street. How can we provide the whiskey complement to that? Do they want to go deep? Very often with the casual, there's a very park-like feeling to our location, and so are people just hanging out? Are they just chilling? Do they want the thing that they always want?
Your place is like almost like the patio for the park. It's you're on the corner of Nash Square, so even if you're not here or not, it is a big square. It is an actual square block, and it's a park. And as we alluded to on the previous episode, like Danny Meyer would have been very proud of you both, of you all, to like build a restaurant across from a city park, because it'll never go away. It may improve as times go on, as we're seeing with more squares as happening right now, but you'll always have that as your backdrop. And then just visually, your place has this big open-ended front door. It's like a garage door that just flips open and kind of has a big welcoming feel to it, and inside then it's just filled with all this booze. But yeah, I get the geeky side, because Matt and I can both attest to, on the wine side, which we're probably a little bit more familiar with, we talked about aging and, don't drink that bottle for the next 15 years. Don't even look at it. Don't look at that one. Matt may have more patience than I do. And Matt, I don't know. Do you even have a cellar anymore, Matt?
I have a wine fridge and working on a cellar.
But I mean, are you holding on? Do you have like a certain amount of bottles that you're not opening because you're waiting for them to hit the right age?
I would say more of the right occasion, but yes.
Yeah. See, I won't do that anymore. I just go, it's here, and I may not be here tomorrow, and if this bottle needs to be consumed, not to say that I drink everything that I buy the second I buy it, but I'm not letting time dictate why I'm going to buy it or not, or drink it or not. I'm just going to do it when it makes sense. I think that's like being present-minded, right? And being like in the moment.
Exactly.
We don't want to. We want people to just enjoy the stuff that we have. I mean, that's not to say that we don't have a good cellar program in the back.
Totally not stashing stuff away.
But that's good because you have what's ready now.
Yeah,
available.
Right.
So that's great.
Yeah, that's part of what I think our success with at least our whiskey selection goes is because we were kind of shorthanded, or I felt shorthanded when we first opened.
Yeah,
I just said to these guys, "Go nuts! Here's a blank check. Let's go get some really great whiskey." And they
first whiskey.
They're overachievers.
Yeah. I mean, so let me ask with Johnny and Aaron. Being that you guys. Weren't the owners of this place, but you came on to help out with the confusion and the chaos that with Michael's accident, but also just opening a restaurant in general, but maybe to have less coverage than where it was initially anticipated. Did you guys kind of just feel like you had more burden to bear, more responsibilities to take on, and how did you do that?
We asked a lot of questions, and Jeff told us that it was our job to find the answer to a lot of them, which was it was encouraging.
Also empowering.
And that was definitely key to. I don't know if Jeff was just Tom Sawyering us into doing things, but there were a lot of other restaurants where they didn't have answers, and also I wasn't allowed to come up with them, and I left those places. And,
it's frustrating.
And I mean, we were asked very early on, do you not agree that the reason you left all these old restaurant jobs was because of bad managers? And we all said yes right away, and he was like, all right, well, don't do that. And so even though sometimes, he was he was working with websites and other contractors and getting some behind the scenes done, and almost everything else, he just encouraged us to figure these answers out. So it was definitely empowering. I don't know where. I know I was feeling it. I don't know how it got masked over, but it's the scale of that place, the number of employees we have now, the number of people that looked at any one of us for so many big answers. Like, that's terrifying to me now, and I missed it in the excitement and the rush of opening the place. But
hey, Aaron, I can't help but think about talking about finding answers and helping to find answers. Is some people who really help us to find answers and can help you if you're opening a restaurant or doing anything in the culinary business is Forest Firm.
Nicely done, Matt. Let's speak with somebody from the Forest Firm, and we'll be right back.
Everybody has legal questions, especially in the food and beverage industry. So that's why we've provided Jen and the Forest Firm to help us out. And if you follow us on Instagram at NCFB Pod, we'll put out a post weekly from Forest Firm and ask a question. It might be the question that we ask Jen on the show.
If I am looking to start my own business in the F&B world and I don't even know where to begin, do I just hire you sort of on retainer and then your suite of services is available to me, or is it sort of more an a la carte situation?
So I would say if you have a business idea and you don't even know where to start, go ahead and talk to us. Mm-hmm. One of our specialties is getting a business up and going. So that might be as simple as getting you that single member LLC that you need just to get the business started, giving you a checklist of, who else you need to hire. You need to get your CPA. You need to get perhaps a bookkeeper, other people in place in order to make sure you're moving your business forward. Then from there, we can continue to work on other things as they come up. But it really is as simple as like, hey, I want to start a business. Can you help me get the legal side of it up and running? And that's exactly what we'll do, because there is some of that that back end work just to establish the business. And then, of course, as other things happen and fall into place, your lease, your employees, maintaining the business as it continues to grow and move forward, we'll continue to partner with you at every step of the way.
Okay, so if you're thinking about starting a business, call Jen Hoverstadt at Forest Firm, and she'll get the ball rolling.
It makes
Absolutely.
sense.
To learn more about the Forest Firm and what they can do for you, click the link in our show notes. Or visit forestfirm.com/NCFB to request a free consultation for your business. You can also reach them at 877-669-1455. Forest Firm, business attorneys across North Carolina.
And we're back. Thank you, Forest Firm. Johnny, you were about to kind of add into what that felt like about opening the business and it almost just being forced into taking control, right? What was that like?
Well, after early on, after I'll say Jeff kind of vetted me and saw that I kind of had a clue as to what I was doing, he, on several occasions, like the phrase was, "It's your bar," which was intimidating. That he was, I mean, it's his and Thor's, Mike's baby.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the bar is obviously half the program. And for Jeff to not know me personally and go, "This is your program, work it out," was intimidating and exciting and wonderful. And, you know, for us that, you know, kind of figure it out, or it was hard to figure out how much leeway we had.
So let me ask you right there, who were you before this? What gave you the right to start doing all this whiskey kitchen bartending?
Hi, I'm Johnny Berry.
Where'd you come from?
Right.
Where did you work?
I've been in Raleigh bartending for the better part of 20 years. And if we go way back, Bogart's on Glenwood South was a huge concept. We set 420 people, 28-seat bar. We had a huge kitchen. We did catering. We had 2 back rooms that set 120 people. So, like, our cocktail menu was 50 martinis. So, and I was bar manager there. So I was already accustomed to running a large program, 6 bartenders, 2 bar backs. We'd run 20 servers on a Friday and Saturday night. Like, so this project, although different, I was not uncomfortable. I prefer working at larger bars. I prefer managing larger bars. Neighborhood bars have their space and their place, but you put me in a tiny bar, I go crazy. I need room to roam.
Free range bartender.
Yeah, exactly. And
So how does that work in terms of Jeff and Thor basically hand you the keys and say, make it work whiskey wise? Do you sit down with Aaron and be like, all right, so are we going to focus on bourbon and then have some other stuff? Or are we going to set up, okay, we're going to have 20 Irish whiskey selections, 20 Scotch selections, 20 domestic whiskeys? How do you begin to organize that?
Well, we played Pokemon and we had to catch them all.
Surely.
I think, we started, the 3 of us, I guess, at times would sit down and basically, if it's good and it's available to us, we want it.
Right.
Thor said something, Michael Thor. We'll call him Thor from this point on because I think that's what
Sure.
you all call him, right?
Yeah.
So Thor had mentioned that I claimed, aren't you the largest, collection of whiskeys and all? And he stopped me and said, no, we're not the largest in North Carolina, but we're the largest of the ones that actually matter. And I think he kind of made a point to say that the flavored ones and the ones that are basically off your purview at all, you're not going to intentionally have the bubble gum flavor.
There's no Fireball. Right. There's no
Yeah. So with like the purist's version of whiskey, and we don't need to get super geeky about whiskey, but of course whiskey is the blanket term for that type of spirit, whereas bourbon is sub of that, and Scotch is below that, and Canadian whiskey. All of those are encapsulating the name whiskey. So within that, you're taking what a whiskey drinker would acknowledge as actual whiskey. Is that fair to say?
Instead of, and that one of the later permutations of our table of contents and kind of whiskey structure was we didn't want to go with the flavored whiskey liqueurs with your Fireballs and
your
schnapps
cherry
things.
Flavored and
sorry 19-year-olds
peaches.
But we also didn't want to alienate people, so we did lean heavy into whiskey touched and whiskey affiliated things. So whether it was aged in a whiskey barrel, of a tequila, a gin, rum. It's the whole rum world.
Several wines.
Mezcal, and a bunch of wine also. There's also a ton of half the whiskey world by volume at some point touches a wine barrel. So that caused us to put a lot of thought into our wine program. And we never thought we'd sell as much wine or beer as we do. But so there's a lot of things related to whiskey that we want to make sure we put as much thought into too, because we were already saying, all right, we have to, in a polite way, say no, we don't have certain things and encourage them on the rest of the menu. So there's a lot of things we don't even consider, we consider, we just know we're not going to.
Sure. Yeah.
So just from what you're saying, it's like it doesn't really matter category space-wise. It's just a simple equation of if it's good and it's available, we have it, and we'll make room for it.
Yeah, there was, Johnny had, so I had done this for about 10 years, and I'm not used to running into people who have done my job pretty much exactly for 10 years longer than me, still doing it. And so that was a learning process Johnny and I had working together, because we didn't really know how our roles related to one another at the beginning. And no one did. It was one of those things we were supposed to figure out.
What's the distinguishing difference between what you both do?
Johnny does more. He does bar-specific management. I bar program, bar training. I help him with the training aspect, specifically the whiskey-heavy training, and he teaches technique.
Who gets to code all the invoices?
He doesn't touch,
that's shared.
This asshole doesn't touch any invoices.
Part of defining your roles at Whiskey Kitchen is strategically doing and not doing things.
Yeah.
A thing we didn't realize was happening until it had already kind of defined us was how much time it takes Johnny spends specifically on getting all that whiskey and then inventorying it. And so that was kind of a he needed help on some of the management, on some of the following new people around the bar and stuff. And that's something I wanted to do, but also Joanna needed my help kind of managing some of the bigger pieces. So I get most of my bar fix on. When it comes to the bar specific things, I ask Johnny what he needs.
Yeah.
And I do it when it comes to the philosophical stuff. We argue and bicker and make Jeff choose his winning.
I'm very much like the whiskey hound and trying to keep track of, especially North Carolina being a control state. It's hard to know what's coming when, and very limited quantities come in at certain times. So just tracking and keeping up with that is a pain. And I often will refer to Aaron, and we bounce stuff back and forth. But specifically, like, hey, these things are available. Is it worth it? Does it fit in with what we are trying to do? Is this a quality product? Is this a flash in the pan? Is this something worth trying to keep around?
Is it interesting? Is it something that they're going to stop making soon?
Right. Is it significant?
The whole Scotch industry is releasing, so we read a lot and talk a lot about what releases are just them kind of polishing over the fact that they aren't keeping up with trends, that some brands are taking away age statements for a reason of demand, and some are taking away age statements because they can't compete anymore.
Being that I got to get out of here in a minute, I would be remiss without asking, but I got to know what it was like for you guys when Thor walked back in that door, and then what it's like now and how he's working himself back as part of the team.
Yeah, I mean, we were thrilled when he was able to come and see the place for the first time. We had done FaceTime tours of the place with him, and he had seen the finished product and seen all the stories about the place. But for him to see it in person for the first time was a huge deal. And he was still down in Atlanta for a while, and when he finally moved back here earlier, I guess mid 2018, it was great to have him back in the building and helping me to keep an eye on things, and it's just been great.
None of us had met him before. He moved back April 8th or 9th, but he made his first visit March 12th or 13th, and it was kind of So I only remember
2016
of 2017.
17.
And I remember I'm terrible with dates and not at all organized. I only remember that.
Sound pretty good with the dates
I
right
would say
now.
that's pretty amazing. Yeah,
Well,
no clue.
So I just interviewed all of you guys for this story for a smaller magazine. So that was one way I remember that. Except March 13th is my birthday, and I'd not met one of my owners, and he surprised us on a first attempt at a small scale whiskey dinner, where I had to talk to people, and I was trapped. So I'm already a nervous person in front of people, and then the other half of my business ownership rolls in a wheelchair, and all I knew about him was how crazy his recovery situation was, how impossible of a comeback he had made. And I knew that they were trying to get back. I did not know he was in town, and he rolls up and joined the class. I'd seen his wife. We'd not gotten to know one another.
Right. So there was a little.
And Thor was just literally, his name is Thor.
Definitely intimidation factor.
So that's why that date stuck out. And the whole team was kind of like blown away. All we knew is it was next to impossible that he was there with us, and he was there with us. And a lot of his friends, Chef Boda and Chef Clayton, who has been part of the team since the beginning, those guys kept us on par with, I'm sure, all the stories Mike didn't want us to know. But also for a restaurant to be that tight-lipped and not to have a peep that he's rolling into town. And I don't know how he's done it. He still goes through medical issues all the time, and that guy pushes himself. And it's one of those things that is never ceases to be kind of awe-inspiring.
That's awesome.
This segment is brought to you by the Triangle Wine Company. Visit Triangle Wine Company stores in Morrisville, Cary, and Southern Pines, North Carolina. Or order your wine and beer online at trianglewineco.com. And be sure to use our promo code NCFB to receive 10% off your purchases. Triangle Wine Company.
Whiskey kitchen. There are two words here. There's whiskey and there's kitchen. And we've been talking a lot about whiskey, and we're going to get back into it too. But I have to talk about the culinary side, because that was going to be Thor's responsibility, right? I mean, Jeff, that was his deal. You were essentially front of the house, and he was back of the house.
Essentially, yeah.
Essentially, over generalizing, but that was kind of what you had known. Because remind me again, you were coming from Flying Saucer. Is that?
Yeah, I was the general manager for Flying Saucer for about 12 or 13 years.
Yeah. You'd done it a few times.
I had done it a few times. I learned enough from those guys that I felt comfortable. And when we got together, we just had a conversation of we should get together and do a restaurant. I know, front of the house. I know, having a wide selection of good product to manage and a large team of people to manage, and I know how to do that. And I knew that he was an incredible chef. My wife and I had been over to their house, Sarah and Mike's, to have dinner.
Yeah.
Many times, and
I was
just always blown away by his cooking, and so and when we were putting the project together, we coming up with the name. It was we wanted the name to help communicate what we did, and there was really nothing more simple than Whiskey Kitchen.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah,
I love that when you're naming. I'm in the process of helping to name a business right now, and it's not easy or it's extremely easy. It's like it either hits you or you're just sitting there in front of a blank page for days. But so with the kitchen aspect, and with Michael no longer able to effectively cook in the kitchen, you had to find somebody. And from what he had mentioned, Boda was helping out, but he was in New York, and he was coming down, I guess, at times to help out with things. But how did Clayton fit into this whole thing, and how did he get attached to the job as the chef?
Clayton was kind of supposed to be on board from day one. He and Mike had worked together for a number of years, and so Mike had always kind of had Clayton in mind for
like a sous chef, maybe,
kind of being his right hand and helping him as a team like they had in the past. And we brought Clayton on. Clayton was technically the first employee that we brought on, and around that time is when Chef Boda came into town. and offered his help and started working with Clayton on the menu. And he went back to New York for a little while and then came back and really gave us 100% of his time for, I'd say, 6 months, something along those lines.
6 months.
Chef Boda did.
Chef Boda did, yeah. So he was here full time, really helping to establish things and help Clayton.
Was Chef Boda kind of like at this point was starting to make the specific menus, and then Clayton and he were kind of like working them out, like working out the recipes, working out the ordering schedule, and the how you're going to physically put it together.
Yeah.
Kind of how that worked out.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So then of course at some point, once now you're open and you're flowing, Chef Clayton starts to kind of understand and feel how the kitchen works, and then now is kind of left to his devices to be effectively the chef. Is that fair as well?
Yeah, essentially, we've got a couple other great chefs that work pretty closely with Clayton to manage the whole kitchen aspect of things, and they're a great team. Chef Aaron Madiak and Kyle Tiers are great, creators, and
they've got like a great triumvirate thing going on right now. Like, but any of them individually, it would be a different restaurant. But between the three of them, and the way that things get hashed out and knocked back and forth, then that's why things are dialed in the way they are now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a massive restaurant. I mean, what's the square footage? It's, I think,
6,000 square feet. Yeah,
7 million.
Yeah,
it feels like it.
That would take a lot of. That does take a lot of manpower, person power to put together, and just wrapping your concept around, or your brain around the concept is got to be mind-boggling in its own sense. But that's what we had noticed about the Whiskey Kitchen. To be honest, I expected really good whiskey to be there. That's kind of like, that's the point, right?
Sure.
You walk in, you're like, I'm going to see some good whiskey. So you checked all those boxes for me as a diner. And then, the beer, as you mentioned, also, you didn't just have beer. You have really well thought of, a lot of local, but even the beer that's not local is like very purposefully picked to make sense with beer, with the season, with whatever it is. Quite impressive, to be honest, of what you're all doing.
Thank you.
But the food, I gotta say, was probably the thing that made me most remember the Whiskey Kitchen. The first thing I ever had there was the chicken pot pie with the legs sticking out the front, and a great visual. It just comes in this great little
well, now you
ceramic
can't,
cast.
You can't show your face now. The kitchen will harm you if you say that was your favorite thing.
Oh, did they not like that dish?
They just didn't like it. I mean, it just had a long pickup time, and we sold a crap ton of them.
Bring it back. Yeah,
they weren't expecting to sell as many. I think.
Yeah,
as,
I do love, and I'll say this in front of any chef that says this. I always love chefs. Typically, they hate the thing they have to make the most of.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? That's kind of.
That's what everybody wants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh darn, you're successful. At
You
this
did
one
it.
thing.
You did it right. And
Yeah, it also goes with like the fans that like I'm going to show my age, but like Nirvana became huge, right? And it's like 10 years after Nirvana was just the biggest band ever. Everyone's like, I don't like Nirvana, man. They're so played out, whatever. It's like, well, you do know the album didn't change, right? Like it still sounds exactly the same as it sounded in 1992 when it came out. So it's you that changed. You're affected by society and by everything else. That's why you don't like it, but the music still is the same. That chicken pot pie is dope. It's delicious. So bring it back.
it was pretty perfect.
Yeah, it was great.
But those ideas, and then it's what is it? It's a small menu, if you want to call, or a small plates menu, if you will. Like there's a lot of options. What's important too is today, like having dietary options for so many different people, with whether you're vegan or vegetarian or gluten free or whatever. It seems like you are pretty welcoming of most diners, because I dine out with a lot of people that fit all of those categories, and they're always like, "Oh yeah, Whiskey Kitchen. Now we're good. We can eat whatever we want when we go there."
Yeah, that was very important to us from the start, and that was one of those things that didn't even really need to be said. Chef Boda and Clayton, everyone that everyone knows we're trying to be as welcoming to everyone as we possibly can, and that includes anyone with restrictions.
Yeah. So now, what's the situation like? Now Michael Thor he's here, he lives here, he can have an opinion and say things. So is he starting to become like more integral into the creative method of the menu, or are you guys like kind of working more as a team the way you initially thought you were going to work from the beginning?
Well, not really. I mean, I think we expected to be, collaborating directly on the menu items, and because of the circumstances, real similar in the way that we gave the bar kind of a free check, or a blank check, just go do it well. Clayton, after Chef Boda left, Clayton has done a fine job at keeping the ball rolling and doing things good. And I know that he and Mike communicate a lot and collaborate on the creative side of things. Certainly, he has a lot of input. He's at our meetings every week, and definitely a big part of things.
Surprisingly, and I hate to say surprisingly, active in the restaurant.
He answers a lot of emails for me. It's great.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's the type of stuff that really could be helpful. Well, let's get into some whiskey because we're here. I want to talk about some specifics. So I'm going to put you all on the spot a little bit. Let's talk about some things. For one, just personal choice and personal picks for all of you. What are you drinking right now? What is something that floats your boat when you're thinking about it? We can go around the room. Whoever's got the first answer to come in, be like, "This is the one."
Redbreast.
Ooh,
Cask strength.
The cask strength blew my mind. I don't know if I can every day drink it though.
No.
Like all occasion. The Redbreast 12 or 15. It doesn't matter what temperature it is. It doesn't matter what I've eaten. What else?
Redbreast is Irish whiskey.
Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
It's I really wish I had some small mom and pop answer for that, but it's just really good stuff. They've been making it the same way. Single Irish single pot still.
Yeah.
Does half of its life in a sherry cask, half of its life in a bourbon barrel. It's just been the same for a long time. It's smooth. It's a lot of Irish whiskey. You think of College and Jameson and stuff like that, but it's kind of at the beginning. A lot of maybe non-whiskey aficionados drink it, but the longer you drink whiskey, a lot of whiskey nerds kind of circle back to the Irish stuff, and it's super approachable. I bring a bottle every wedding. That's my go-to gift.
I do have a quick Redbreast story that I tell people when it comes to like bar management and all, and like being aware of your clientele. I used to frequent an Irish pub in Santa Monica, California. That's I'm out there in LA, and this Irish pub did not have Redbreast. That's fine. You don't have everything that you're supposed to have. But an Irishman walked in one time and he was like, "I'll take some of Redbreast." And they go, "Oh, we don't have it here." And it's like, "You don't have Redbreast? What are you talking about?" He's like, "I just moved here from Ireland, and if you carry it, I will come, and if you don't, I won't. So I leave it to you. I'll come back in 2 weeks." So the bar managers listened to him, and I'm just a frequent guy, just sipping on a beer. I'm like, "You should get that Redbreast, man." They did. Put a bottle up on the wall. Guy came in, started drinking it, started becoming regular. That guy started telling other people about it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, whatever." And they started having to order more bottles. Now, currently, and I don't know because this is going back about 8 years, so maybe the Whiskey Kitchen's taken over that moniker. But at the time, O'Brien's on Wilshire in Santa Monica was the #1 selling Redbreast account.
Oh wow!
After like 3 years of bringing it in. They didn't even know what it was until this guy brought it to their attention, and now they're the most dominant in the United States.
You got to listen to your customers.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, and one bottle and one guy can change everything. So it's being aware of what you do. And if you listeners are out there and you haven't had Redbreast, come on down to the Whiskey Kitchen, try it, because it is awesome and it's different. It's not Jameson at any way. It's not Bushmills. It's its own thing, and it's more sophisticated, I'd say, right?
It's Irish whiskey nerds will kind of they break down. Powers is the highest selling Irish whiskey in Ireland. Jameson is for tourists. Middleton is for, they have this kind of combination, sophisticated kind of redneck human that we don't really have here. But Middleton is your classy but outdoorsy, not like not
classy redneck.
Not prissy
that sounds
person.
like the next name of your new restaurant.
And Redbreast is the writers, professors, and whiskey nerds.
Yeah. Well, let's keep it going around the room. What about yourself there, Johnny? What are you drinking?
One of the favorites on the wall is Little Book. It's by Booker's.
I'm not familiar.
Kind of the abbreviated story is that Booker No, who is one of the great grandfather's. He's bourbon royalty.
Yeah.
He started Booker's Bakers. He was master distiller at Jim Beam for quite a while.
Those are traditionally too like high octane, pretty aggressive, big, bold,
Right.
high proof.
Booker basically kind of started the whole idea of small batch, high quality bourbon, and his grandson would always kind of follow him around the factory. He was, I can't say for sure that he was his favorite grandson, but that's the way the story goes, and they were just always together, and so he picked up the nickname Little Book, Big Booker, Little Book.
Oh, okay.
And so being raised in the whiskey business and following his grandfather around, he released, I guess, either 2016, maybe late 2017, Little Book, Chapter 1, which was his first super premium release. And it won, his first premium release won top 5 whiskeys in the world.
Oh, wow.
And it's delicious. It's impossible to find now. We still have some. We have actually, there's the original edition, and he just released the second edition, Chapter 2, which is No Simple Task. Again, an homage to his grandfather Booker No. But it's big. It's 123 proof.
Oh, jeez.
And it's, that 123 proof is masked very well. It's still hot. There's still a lot of heat on it. There's a ton of flavor. It's everything you want in a whiskey. It's caramel and vanilla and char and hefty mouthfeel, and it's just delicious. So that's for a whiskey on the wall that I don't indulge in a lot. I think that's great.
Sure. Well, that sounds like a special occasion type of one. I imagine it's not $9.
And it's actually not bad. Right now it's around 24 or so.
Okay. For a drink or a shot.
For a shot.
Yeah.
As far as still kind of that mid-level, not necessarily you're just casually kicking back on the patio with ginger ale. I actually like Wild Turkey Rare Breed, Jefferson's Reserve.
Yeah.
Those are...
You're fine putting ginger ale in all those?
No. I'll drink those neat. Or rocks.
You did not include ginger ale in your requirements. For this.
Oh, no. Johnny mentioned ginger ale. I was saying,
You know, for the people, sometimes it's hard to drink whiskey sitting straight in the sun.
Yeah, I got you. No, that's great. Little Book. Well, if you said there's still some left over there, so maybe somebody listening to the show will have to make their way over there and gobble up the last few ounces.
Indeed.
Jeff, yourself, what are you drinking?
I'd say the I.W. Harper 15 year is when we first got that bottle, Aaron gave me a taste of it, and I just fell in love immediately. It's the perfect bourbon in my opinion.
Really?
It's great. Yeah.
So what is it? What would it? Give me a frame of reference or so, or any of you guys give me a frame of reference of what that flavor profile is, or something that's close to it.
I put it in the slightly bigger, smoother, more lingering Woodford Reserve kind of. Doesn't have quite the spice, but it lingers a bit more.
Yeah, Woodford's a pretty approachable whiskey in itself, and like I'm looking, you got Maker's Mark, a brand here on your water bottle. Maker's is probably the lightest of all the big names, right? Like it seems to be pretty.
Well, Maker's is a wheated bourbon,
Yeah.
and whenever you add wheat to a bourbon, it softens it, makes it a little more approachable, a little softer, a little more round. So Maker's is a great Maker's, Bernheim, our Larceny, all kind of. I don't want to say good intro bourbons, but for somebody that's a little scared of the heat or the bite,
Yeah,
it's a good intro, a good soft introduction to the world of whiskey.
sure.
Old Forester's another popular wheated name.
Yes.
Bernheim's actually a wheat whiskey. It's not a bourbon, so it's all wheat. So it's even a step before. We use it a lot as training wheels. Someone wants to get into whiskey but is scared or whatever. It kind of tease wheat whiskey as it's whiskey flavored something.
Would this kind of analogy be fair? Like in Scotch, I've said to people, if you like Macallan or Oban, you're kind of on one side of the realm, which is more the yummy phase. It's a little bit sweeter, maybe a little bit more approachable, easy. Then if you go over to Lafroig or Lagavulin, which is the peat monster, and that's usually for a very sophisticated Scotch drinker. It's not an entry-level drink.
Macallan definitely is a good intro Scotch. They've got not in a negative way, but a whole lot of their whiskeys you could say don't taste like whiskey. They've got much more wine and rum and just these other sweetness notes that.
I always get a lot of vanilla, a lot of fruit.
When people say I don't like Scotch because whatever they say after that, and there's a lot of Macallan that they should then like. Smoke, spice, peat, whatever. Macallan just has a lot of really, really approachable, and they have so many whiskeys. But nobody in Scotland drinks them because they're from a region that had a lot of people and had a lot of ports, so they had access to the wine trade and the rum trade, so they were experimenting with all these flavors with whiskey that was being taken elsewhere to be sold.
Yeah, and then they figured out what was the world's palate probably better than most.
And that's exactly played it in. Exactly. You play to your audience.
Right. So there's a place for all of these, and one is not better than the other, but yeah, it's what your perception is going to be. What are your thoughts on Japanese whiskey? Like Suntory.
They can't make enough of it right now.
Right? Yeah, it is amazing, right? I'm a huge fan of Japanese whiskey.
Definitely a very interesting thing happening in whiskey right now, especially because fairly cheap stuff we're not going to be able to get much of. They literally can't keep up. They can't get it out of the region, let alone distribute it all around the world. So, which I'm sure they'll figure out. They've got all the zeros in their bank account to do that. But when you think of all the things that make Scotch regions make the whiskey taste different are the climate, the water, and how the grain tastes differently in that area. And Japan is a country that has claimed to have like 25 seasons, and just the climate, the weather, the water, the soil, everything is so different throughout the whole country. They've just made every little distillery on the other side of the mountain is making wildly different stuff. So they've got some real creative stuff going on. We had a whiskey dinner. Used all the Japanese whiskey we could for it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that too, because we're getting close to the end here. But before we leave, I'd like our listeners to know too that you guys you do participate in events and dinners. You recently just had one, and you're doing them. It's a series, right?
Yeah, we call it Supper Club.
The Supper Club.
Yeah, and
what does that entail?
Basically, we choose either a theme for a whiskey. In the case with the Japanese dinner, we chose to do feature Japanese whiskeys paired with food that the kitchen gets creative with for each one of the dinners that we do. We do them several times a year. Most recently, we did a head-to-tail theme of dinner. And Aaron, why don't you tell them about
head to tail, pig head to tail, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So every supper club, there's a spectrum, whether a distillery or a style of whiskey inspires us, or the kitchen has a cuisine or a inspiration that they want to follow, and then we follow whiskey narrative and pairings off of what they're doing. But most recently, we wanted to celebrate pork because this is North Carolina, and our chefs got pretty nerdy with nose-to-tail or head-to-tail presentation of pork, and in kind of the philosophy of breaking one animal down into its summary parts, originally to make them last longer, to make more money off them, to be able to get them to market. Distillers kind of have this whole narrative. There are distillers' cuts, too, in making whiskey, and the first whiskey coming out of a still isn't good. You have to wait for it. The first whiskey coming out is called the heads.
Yeah.
You wait for it to get good. You switch the tanks. That's the hearts, and then eventually the tails are coming out. But every distiller has to they put cuts in different places, so there's a different amount of heads and tails actually in every whiskey, and that's what gives whiskey its unique character, because it's those heads and tails that give the whiskey its unique kind of reactive abilities with the barrel.
Nice.
How pliable is it? Right.
Yeah, and in turn, kind of paired with the whole idea of going head to tail with the pig and doing every example there as well. Well, gents, thank you so much. This has been a wild two-part series to learn everything that is going on at the Whiskey Kitchen. Of course, where can we follow you if we're trying to get on social media?
We're on Instagram at whiskey.kitchen.
That's right, whiskey.kitchen. Even your website is crazy, isn't it?
Whiskey.kitchen.
Whiskey.kitchen.
There's no .com.
No .com.
Yeah,
we thought that was pretty clever until we had to explain that every time we tell someone what the address is.
Whiskey.kitchen.
Whiskey.kitchen.
check it out. They've got a lot of things happening. If you're a big fan of whiskey, you're going to be satisfied. I know that. And if Matt was still here, he had to leave. He's taking care of Cam right now. He would tell everybody to eat and drink merrily.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.